Okay, so here's a question for everyone that just clicked on this video. If you live close to the United States border and you haven't crossed over since the Orange McNugget took power, are you curious at all how those border states are actually doing? Given that I'm from BC, Washington State is somewhere that I'm very familiar with, but obviously I wasn't going over anymore. But ever since the beginning of last year, I have been curious on how these border states and businesses are actually doing. We hear it from the news, but I'd rather hear from firsthand people. So in this video, I'm going to share an interview that I did with a Canadian citizen that is living in Skagit County, Washington. And he's definitely noticed a difference in terms of Canadian plates, but also his own business as well. Today's backdrop I felt was suiting, and it was one that I actually took last summer. It's of the Peace Arch border crossing on the Canadian side. You can see on the very far right lane is the Nexus lane, which is empty. Now, given that this photo was taken in the summer, yeah, there are cars, but a lot has changed since the summer up until now. And I'm positive there's no lineups like this right now. Okay, let's get into the interview that I had with a Canadian citizen living just across the other side of the border, and he shares his thoughts on the lack of cross-border shopping and tourism, and even the lack of Europeans that visit the area. I will refer to him as G. I hope everybody enjoys the discussion. Oh, and for the record, I didn't edit the audio on this interview. I think I need to get over my fear of saying and ahs too much. So what you're hearing is just raw from my side. Hope you all enjoy it. Very happy that you responded to me on Reddit, because when you replied to one of my posts that I have on my subreddit, you mentioned that you're from Washington State. And Washington State is a state that I'm very familiar with. And I mean, I've mentioned it on my channel multiple times that, I used to go down on a monthly basis to pick up packages. We would go to Bellingham, Trader Joe's, and then sometimes out to the Seattle premium outlets and even Seattle. So it's somewhere that I am very, very familiar with. So I want to thank you because you are from Washington State, or you're currently residing in Skagit County. But can you let the audience know a little bit about yourself? You're free to mention what you want and what you don't want, or if you want to keep anything confidential, go for it.
Sure. I'm Canadian. I was born in British Columbia, grew up in Toronto and Edmonton, lived in Edmonton for a long time, the Edmonton area. Moved to the States because of family reasons. And then, long story short, since 2020, I've been living in Skagit County, which is about 100 kilometers south of Vancouver, on the Western Washington coast, just south of Blaine and Bellingham, and have been running a family coffee shop since, which my wife and I are now in the process of selling and closing down so that we can move back to the home that we own near Nanaimo.
Nice. So you're currently closing the coffee shop, and then the end goal is to move back to Nanaimo, and I guess that's it for you for the United States, right?
Yeah, that will be.
Got it. Okay. So I'm happy to hear you're coming back to Canada.
Me too. Thank you.
But one thing I do want to find out though is that this is for me personally, and I'm sure a lot of British Columbians are interested as well. But what is it like in Washington State right now? I mean, specifically Blaine, Bellingham, and I guess even Skagit County, because I've been to Whidbey Island a few times, Oak Harbor, just as like day trips and weekend trips, right? And I know for a fact that there's a lot of British Columbians that head south just for the weekend, right? So, from your point of view, living in Skagit County and visiting Blaine and Bellingham quite often, what's it been like ever since the Orange McNugget went into the office?
At first, before all of the 51st state and tariff stuff started in February of last year, there wasn't really any difference. Our business has been growing at a pretty consistent rate, and amount of business that we get in any given month is pretty predictable on the basis of the historic data. On if we get X in January, we will get 0.9x in February, and so on. And in January of last year, everything was pretty much normal. In February of last year, towards the end of the month, when the tariff stuff started and the 51st state stuff started, it dropped off really dramatically, really quickly. For about 2 months, I would say we had virtually no Canadians in at all. And also the area that we're in is a big European tourist center because Skagit County is a tulip growing area, and we get tulip tourists even coming over from Holland usually. And I'd say we also had basically no Europeans last year. So
Wow.
the net result was that our business dropped by about 20 to 30% very, very quickly.
Hmm.
And in terms of foreign visitors, either Canadian or European, we really have not seen that pick up. It's picked up a little bit, and I can go
Hmm.
into some detail on that if your viewers would be interested in a couple of
Yeah, yeah,
individual
go for it.
stories. And,
Go for it. Yeah.
so we have one vendor who is it's a Canadian vendor, and their representative is a Canadian who lives in the United States. And they had a lot of trouble with the randomness of the tariffs on Chinese and Canadian manufactured products, with the result that for a brief period of time they weren't able to ship to us. And then following that, our vendor, specifically, her mother had a apartment in California that she's gone to for 20 years. So we're talking a 73-year-old English speaking Canadian woman who's been coming to the States for 20 years.
Hmm.
And maybe about 4 or 5 months ago, she was pulled over in a parking lot by the Immigration and Customs Enforcement people, and spent a couple of days in custody, basically just for having a British Columbia license plate. So as you
Wow.
can imagine, that is the type of story that is not getting a lot of play in the news in the United States. The domestic news is focused more on some of the stuff that's going on with the immigrations and customs enforcement people on a larger scale. But these
Yeah.
individual stories just are, which would in any kind of normal time be front page news in every newspaper, are
Yeah.
basically just getting lost.
Yeah.
But as you can imagine, our vendor is basically telling her family and everyone she knows to not travel to the United States. And we've had
Yeah.
other customers that have come into the coffee shop that have said that they have been hassled at the border. And yet at the same time, we've had other customers that have come in and said that's basically normal.
Yeah.
But the bottom line is clearly things are going on that are making people uncomfortable for good reason, and
Hmm.
the Canadian traffic is not picking up significantly, other than to the extent people had made reservations at hotels or things like that, and didn't want to lose them. So I'm
Right.
interested in seeing what's going to happen this year as we get past the period of time during which people had made reservations in advance, and
Hmm.
just see what's going on in terms of
Yeah.
both Blaine, Bellingham, and the Skagit County area. I look at license plates now, and whereas before, if I walked out of the shop and looked up and down the street at the license plates, I'd see maybe 10-20% BC plates during tourist season. Last
Hmm.
year, I didn't see any. And to the extent that I see Canadian license plates coming back now, there's as many from Alberta as there are British Columbia, which is very unusual. Usually it's much, very heavily skewed towards British Columbia, as you can manage, just because of
Right.
proximity.
Yeah. Yeah. That's interesting that you actually mentioned that this person was detained just for having a British Columbia license plate. Because both sides of the border, we never hear these kind of stories, right? So it's
Mhm.
something that I knew was happening, but I just needed somebody to, see firsthand or hear firsthand that, hey, that, this is actually happening, right? So it is
Mhm.
a good warning for the audience, or, if the audience knows of anybody that's still going down. Because most of what we hear on the news is actually just about, the immigrations, and not just the day travelers or the people going over there for the weekend, and, being targeted specifically because you have a BC license plate should concern everybody that is crossing over on the Peace Arch, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate you bringing that up. And I think also as well, like when you mentioned, I didn't know Skagit County had a lot of European tourists, right? So for the Tulip Festival for last year, I mean, do you think it's still going to happen this year, or are they going to have to make changes because of, obviously nobody is, well, not nobody, but there is a significant decrease in Europeans coming to the United States as well?
The Chamber of Commerce data that we got last year, the Chamber of Commerce has people sign in when they come in to pick up brochures.
Hmm.
So the previous year, they had 60% of the people that signed in during tulip season were from the United States, and 40% were from basically 20% Canadian and 20% non-Canadian. Last year, after all of this nonsense started, it was virtually 100% American. They only
Wow.
had 6 total people from Canada and Europe. I don't think it will probably be as bad this year. On the other hand, I might be wrong, and there might be absolutely nobody.
Yeah.
I don't think they're going to change the overall business at the Tulip Festival. That there is still enough domestic American business for something like that they probably won't have to make many changes. It's the businesses that are really heavily dependent on tourism that are closer to the border, or that are sort of marginal businesses to start with. If you're a business and you have, say, $1 million a year in sales, and you make $100,000 a year, and then you suddenly lose $200,000 or $300,000 worth of that revenue, that doesn't take your profit down from 100,000 to 70,000. That probably takes your profit down from 100,000 to near zero. That
Right.
Losing a small fraction of the total sales, your overheads don't change, your personnel costs don't change, and but your margin changes a lot. So I think the smaller businesses in the tourist towns are going to, they were able to make it through last year because American tourism picked up a little bit just at the same time that the Canadian and European tourism was falling off. We'll see what happens this year, and whether or not businesses like that have got enough depth financially to be able to survive a second year like that.
Yeah.
The coffee shop
And
that I manage is definitely, we're down probably about 20 to 30% relative to where we would have been, and it is really making a substantial difference on the bottom line between being profitable and being very marginal.
yeah, and it's probably like that for a lot of businesses as well. I mean, one that comes to my mind are parcel pickup businesses right on the border, right? So,
Mhm.
I did a few reports, and there was one that I specifically went to in Blaine all the time, and they mentioned that their business is down anywhere from like 50 to 70%, depending on a given day. And if there's no Canadian shipping to their business, then they're gonna have to close. And I know some of them in Point Roberts have actually, or one of them I think in Point Roberts actually closed
Mhm.
because they said that I think 80 to 90% of their customers were coming through Tuason and then crossing the border, picking up their packages. So
Mhm.
it's definitely devastating. And I do wonder. I mean, being from British Columbia and going down myself, you know, Bellis Fair. Have you stopped by there lately and seen how it is? Because I
Yeah.
even before I knew Bellis Fair was on the downhill already, but it must be
Mhm.
a ghost town in there now.
Those are the exact words I was going to use. You could go there and roller skate through the place.
Wow.
As you say, it was malls are not doing for anybody that's listening that's not familiar. Bellis Fair is the shopping mall in Bellingham, and Bellingham's a city of about 100,000 just south of Vancouver.
Yep.
And it is the shopping mall business itself is not really doing very well right now, but Bellis Fair specifically, with the double hit from first COVID discouraging Canadian tourism, and then just starting to recover from that, and now having all of the nonsense associated with trying to travel to the United States and the exchange rate being bad at the same time. They're hurting. You can see that businesses are closed, and that the businesses that are there aren't necessarily the quality of businesses that used to be there, and the place looks empty a lot.
Yeah.
Blaine, I lived in Blaine for almost a year back a few years ago, and there were always Canadians in town. The mail pickup places, the gasoline stations, the
Yep.
restaurants, there are always Canadian license plates out front. I've been to Blaine a couple of times in recent months, and there aren't Canadian license plates to the nearly to the degree that there were. And I
Mhm.
spoke to one of the gasoline station owners there, and he said that his Canadian business was down probably 80%. And
Was it the
that's
Chevron? Was it the Chevron right when you cross the border, or?
yeah, the Chevron by the Starbucks at in downtown Blaine. And
Yeah,
he's
I
sort of
used to fill up there.
he's the gift shop for Blaine as well. I have not
Mm.
spoken to him in the last 6 months, so I don't know if he's picked up a little bit or not. But certainly, it has. Yeah, I wouldn't guess very much.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I'm very familiar with that. I mean, the Chevron right when you cross in from the Peace Arch side,
Mhm.
that's where I used to always fill up. And then one of my parcel pickup package places was just down the road. So
Mhm.
I'm very familiar with that area, and I've always wondered, what's it like now there. But I want to move on to a question that, like, I've always thought, even before, and it is me being a bit naive, but Washington State is a blue state, right?
Mhm.
But I have to bring up an incident that happened to me in 2012, which I never really thought about until last year. But you know, how is the sentiment now, within wherever you are in Skagit, or whatever you're hearing? I mean, is it still kind of, I mean, are people apathetic about things, or are they keeping on top of it, or is it just business as usual for people where you are?
We've had some pretty big protests by relative to the small population that we've had. We've had certainly a very large number of people showing up at protests. There was a big protest downtown in the little town that I live in yesterday, and it was
Yeah.
pretty crowded. So some people are definitely paying attention. Other people, and Washington, as you say, and especially Western Washington, is a very liberal place, and so I think people are more upset here proportionally than they are in other parts of the country. But we also have, I don't want to necessarily characterize it as a problem, the reality that Americans don't pay nearly as much attention to what's going on internationally as almost anyone else in the world. So if I'm talking to a American about the experience that I'm having as a Canadian living in the United States, and bring up the fact that we're being threatened with tariffs on steel and tariffs on automobiles, and destruction of the Canadian automobile industry, and the annexation as the 51st state, and the insults of the Prime Minister being called the governor and stuff like that. Americans are definitely not taking that as seriously as Canadians are. Even the ones who are sympathetic to the idea that the McNugget is causing a lot of problems just don't really fundamentally believe that it's possible for America to be the bad guy in a situation like that. They haven't absorbed the idea that, or at least most of them haven't absorbed the idea that there is permanent damage being done to international relations and the trust that has been built up between, especially the NATO countries, and including Canada and the United States. There's a level of relationship there that if you're outside the United States, you appreciate how important that is. But very few people inside the United States seem to appreciate either how important it is, how easily it can be damaged, or even that it can be damaged. And then you also have a pretty substantial fraction of the population, and less so here, certainly. But I still know people in the Southeast from the brief period of time that I lived there. And there are some of them that are quite happy with what's going on. That they're basically just saying, "Hey, this is exactly what we wanted. We wanted to emphasize American strength, and quit being ripped off by all you little countries." And that if that's what they want, that's certainly what they've got. And I don't think that they have any appreciation at all as to how much damage that's doing and is going to do to the United States.
Yep. And I fully agree with that. I mean, one part on, like, I wanted to bring up my friend again in Nevada. I mean, I think everybody knows who this guy is now, but he's one that is way too apathetic about things and has no clue what's going on. Although, he said he's a registered Democrat, he still has no idea what's going on. And I'm actually the one that's telling him what's going on, with the relations in his country, why it's bad, and why it's a bad image for the United States and stuff, right? But the reason why I brought up this question is, like, originally I before all of this started, like I said, Washington State is a blue state, and I thought everybody in Washington State was blue, but obviously not, right? And the fact that you said those in the Southeast are enjoying what's going on right now.
And I don't want to paint everybody in Southeast with that brush. It's just disproportionate. But we have people in Washington that feel that way. We have people in Eastern Washington, especially, and over towards northern Idaho, that are a center of that kind of thinking. And there are some Trump flags flying in Skagit County, not too far from where I live. Some of them have come down, I'm happy to say, over the last year. But there are still people who are just indifferent to anything that happens outside the United States, and really don't believe that anything that happens outside the United States can actually be important.
Yep.
That and I've reflected a lot over the last year about the fact that Canada got into World War II in 1939, and the United States didn't get into it till 1941. And I'd never really given any serious thought to that before, but there's a reason that happened, and that reason is still here, and and I think that's the descendants of the people that caused that to happen are the ones that are
Mhm.
driving this.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. And what I was trying to say though is that it's more of a blend, right? I mean,
Mhm.
I'm not targeting those in the southwest or
Oh,
southeast
sure.
of Washington, but there's people on both sides all over Washington State, right? So for me, it's just interesting that my vision and my perception of Washington State now has changed ever since the beginning of last year, right? So
Right. Well, occasionally you see comments to the effect that Minnesota or Washington should be absorbed into Canada. No, don't do that. That
yeah, no, I
too
100%
many,
agree with
too
that.
many Americans.
Yeah.
That
Because I get a lot of people in my comments too saying, why doesn't Maine become the a province, right? Or why doesn't Minnesota or be part of Canada? And I always say no, I do not want any U.S. state to join Canada. So
no, there's just no matter which state it is, no matter how liberal it is, even Vermont, there are just too many Americans. That it would shift Canadian politics.
yeah, but on the flip side as well, I mean, there's a lot of great Americans as well. I mean,
Absolutely.
I have a lot of supporters in Washington State that watch my channel, and
Mhm.
I tell them, there's been a few of them that says, we miss you, and we hope one day that we see more BC plates come down. And I've responded to them saying, you know what, I miss my Irish clam chowder. I love that stuff. I'm sure you know what it is, but
Mhm.
I've given that up, and hopefully one day, down the road, maybe I can, have it again, right? But it's just sad how the relationship between the two countries and just the everyday usual, or not every day, but my once a month trip to Blaine, to Bellingham, and even the Seattle premium outlets has just disintegrated. And it's not something that I feel that, hey, it was fun for me to do in the past, but not anymore. So
Yeah,
yeah.
and I have tremendous number of friends and family down here, and I very much want to maintain good relations with my friends and family here. But if the country just makes it impossible to feel safe being here, then that's something that needs to be addressed by Americans domestically. And certainly there are a lot of people who are aware of it. The size of the protests is growing very significantly.
Mhm.
I believe that there's a very high probability that the elections that are coming up in November are going to be a landslide for the Democrats that will surprise people as to how big it is. But that doesn't. It's going to take even if that happens, you've still got the McNugget in office for 3 more years, or his successor, who honestly might even conceivably be worse. And then it's just going to take a tremendous amount of time to fix everything that's been broken, domestically as well as internationally. The damage that's been done to the science and healthcare systems down here is just astounding. But I think the Canada would be well advised to actively recruit American medical and science people right now.
Yep. And there is a movement of the medical personnel and professionals in the United States actively trying to migrate to Canada. So another Canadian content creator named Todd Maffin is definitely helping out with that part, and actually has helped a lot of U.S. professionals move to Canada. So that's definitely a good movement. One thing that you just mentioned earlier, I mean, when it comes to your safety, I've always wondered, like, as a Canadian living in the U.S., have you come across any sort of safety issues or discrimination or like anything because you're a Canadian? I'm just wondering and curious on that or not.
I personally never have,
Mhm.
and the recent situation is the only time that I've ever even given any thought to it.
Right. Got it. Okay. Because one of my friends who's actually living in California, he's had, snarky comments here and there lately, just saying, you're going to be. I mean, what he told me is that some of his colleagues, not close colleagues, who said, had snarky comments saying, well, you might end up being gone pretty soon, right? So you might as well start packing up, right? And he was just like, what kind of comment is that? You're supposed to be a friend, right? So
Mhm.
I was just curious to see, how Canadians are actually being treated in the United States right now. So
Mhm. I have had a couple of those comments, but because I know I'm already on my way out, I have just dismissed them.
got it.
If I wasn't in a position to leave, if I wasn't already essentially underway with the departure process, I probably would have taken that more seriously.
Got it. So just to close off this call, I mean, now that you've already started the departure stuff, I mean, how do you feel? I mean, you're coming back to you're potentially selling your business or closing the business, and then coming back to Canada. I mean, what are your thoughts and feelings right now?
I am excited about getting into Canada at this time. Canada has, back years ago when I was working in the Edmonton area, the business that I worked for got into a situation in which it realized that it had international opportunities, and we started hiring salespeople to go out and pursue markets that were outside Canada and the United States. And
Mhm.
we were phenomenally successful almost immediately. Just we the ability of Canada to go out and engage with the rest of the world, and to really be a leader in engaging with the rest of the world, and to take advantage of the creativity and entrepreneurship and technologies and all of the things that Canada has. We've sort of been asleep since the free trade agreement in the first place, and say, it's just easy to sell the United States. And
Mhm.
I'm viewing this as an opportunity to get out there and really re-engage and use Canada's strengths in working with everybody else outside the United States. And the
Yeah.
experience that I had with that was that Canada can be extremely successful doing that.
Mhm.
My The coffee shop is not my real business, if you will. It's something that I'm doing right now just because of this situation. I am a renewable energy engineer. I work on development and integration of advanced technologies into the electric grid, and I've been doing that for almost 30 years, and I've got a lot of experience with advanced technologies in that area. The United States is actively trying to undermine everything in my professional field right now, with the exception of geothermal energy.
Mhm.
Canada is in a position to really become a world-class leader in many of the technologies on this, or if not the leader, at least as a country that has the ability to go out and take advantage of them and to develop business opportunities. I look at everything that's going on in Canada right now, and I'm saying uh, this is something that terrible in the short run, but in the
Mhm.
long run, this is just a fabulous opportunity for Canada to step up and show what Canada can do on a world stage, and I'm looking forward to being involved in that.
Nice. It sounds like you're very happy to come home as well.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah. So, what's your time frame for coming home? Is it pretty much as soon as you can?
Either selling or closing the shop,
Mhm.
and then after that, it'll take a few weeks to organize everything to get relocated, and to as I say, we've already got the house lined up near Nanaimo to move into as soon as it's possible to do so, and I'm hoping that well before the end of the year, I'll be back and engaged in doing positive things to build positive outcomes in Canada, instead of sitting here fighting a back action against negative things that are happening in the U.S. I am so looking forward. In 2018, I was about to move back into Canada in 2018. A long story as to why I didn't at that point. I went on a house hunting trip from the Seattle area up to Vancouver Island, and in the Seattle area, all of the radio news was about American politics, and it was very excitable and panicked, and oh my God, this is happening, this is happening, this is happening.
Yeah.
Got across the border, turned on CBC, and this just relaxed, normal
Yeah.
environment. That
It's a very calm, very much calmer than what you get in the United States. It's
Yeah,
very,
and look, I mean, that's
yeah,
always been true. That's why we call it the Excited States, right? But
yeah.
the difference in just sort of the attitude and the approach, and the fact that people can still have a reasonable conversation and come to reasonable conclusions without getting mad at each other, even if we are on different political sides, is something that used to be normal in the States, and it's not normal anymore. It's still normal in Canada, and I'm very much looking forward to getting back to an environment where
Nice.
the day-to-day activity is not completely dominated every minute of every day by what's going on with the politics.
Well, we're happy to have you back in Canada. I mean, well, technically
Thank
I'm
you.
out of Canada, but I'm happy to hear that you're coming back. You're coming back to the motherland. I think you're the third person I've actually interviewed that basically said they had enough of the United States and they moved back to Canada. So I want to thank you for your time and joining me, and then also giving us an update on Washington State. I mean, for me, like I said, it's somewhere that I'm very familiar with, and I've always wanted to hear boots on the ground information on, what's it like in Whatcom County or Skagit County and things like that. So, hopefully, yeah, have a safe trip back to Canada, and definitely keep in touch. I mean, I think once you're
Thank
back
you.
in Nanaimo in Canada, I'd love to be able to have a call with you again, and, maybe do a follow-up call and see how things are.
Sure, sounds great. Now, thank you, and thank you for the energy and effort that you're putting into Guard the Leaf. It's important that people be aware of what's going on and have an opportunity to get more detail on some of the stories that the press doesn't necessarily have the bandwidth to cover in the depth that you're covering them in. And I thank you for the opportunity to speak to you and to your audience.
Oh, thank you very much, and thank you for supporting my channel. And I'm not an expert. I'm just a regular Canadian that's just decided to vent, right? So,
Mhm.
I'm glad it's resonating with a lot of people, and I think we just need to be aware of what we feel, I guess, right? So
Mhm.
that's my goal, is to make sure that all of us, what we see on the news, it might not be correct. So I'm just going to correct it and say how I feel, right? And it turns out that a lot of people, I guess, they agree with me. So,
Oh,
but yeah,
well,
thanks for supporting my channel. I really appreciate it.
yeah, thank you.
All right. Well, thanks very much. And yeah, hang on the line. We'll continue chatting.